Back when I was in high school, I wasn't considered one of the privileged ones. My journey through life started in a modest home with a father who ran his own small business and a devoted mother who looked after our home. My early years were carefree. After school, I'd fling my backpack in a corner and spend the rest of the day playing with friends in the neighborhood park. However, things took a different turn during my middle school years when my father's work demanded more of his time, often keeping him away from home for long stretches. Despite his absence, he made an effort on his days off to spend quality time with us, perhaps on a scenic drive or a day at an amusement park. But mostly, it was just my mom and me at home. I remember one night, unable to sleep, I stumbled upon my mom poring over our household budget, her expression weary yet forced into a smile for my sake. She reassured me everything was fine, but the signs of strain were evident. Our meals became simpler, the variety on our dinner table lessened, and the once commonplace fruits disappeared. This change in our lifestyle didn't go unnoticed at school. One day, a classmate named Roy, who enjoyed making fun of others, noticed my plain lunch, a simple serving of rice with a few pickles. He cruelly taunted me, suggesting my dad had abandoned us, which was why our meals had become so basic. His words, filled with mockery, hurt deeply, but the image of my mother's resilient smile held me back from reacting angrily. Fast forward to a recent high school reunion, I encountered the same classmate. Despite us both being adults now, he shockingly drenched me with wine, letting it pour over my head as a twisted joke, as if to remind me of my past struggles. The rich aroma of the wine clung to me, a stark, humiliating contrast to the refined gathering around us. I was filled with anger and disappointment at his unchanged, spiteful behavior. But this time, I was ready. I looked him straight in the eyes, my resolve firm, and declared that this was the beginning of my counterattack. His face paled, eyes widened in shock, perhaps not expecting the once quiet boy to challenge him. My journey, marked by simplicity and challenges, had shaped me, not weakened me. And now it was time for me to show that I wasn't defined by my past, but empowered by it. Growing up, I always tried to avoid trouble, especially to spare my mom any stress. Roy, however, came from a different world. His father was the president of Jack Merchandising, a renowned local food company. This connection made Roy somewhat of a golden boy at school, where teachers saw him as a model student. Behind this facade, he was a notorious bully, leveraging his father's influence to intimidate anyone who dared stand up to him. As a result, my classmates slowly began to distance themselves, unwilling to get caught in Roy's crosshairs. Their indifference only emboldened him, and his bullying intensified. One day, it all came to a head. During lunch, I sat in my usual secluded spot on the staircase trying to eat in peace. But Roy, with his typical sneering smile, decided not to leave me alone. "Hey, Stephen, typical peasant's lunch looks as bad as ever," he taunted, reaching for my lunchbox. Reacting instinctively, I knocked his hand away, which only escalated things. In a flash of anger, Roy grabbed my lunchbox and slammed it onto the ground, scattering the modest meal my mother had prepared. The sight of my lunch in ruins, combined with the thought of my mother's efforts, pushed me past my breaking point. "What the heck are you doing?" I yelled, grabbing him by the collar. His smug response about the consequences of hitting him was the last straw. Before I knew it, I had tackled him to the ground. His once handsome face was now red and swollen. We both lay there, gasping for breath. "You'll pay for this," Roy hissed. Just then, a teacher, drawn by the commotion, intervened and dragged us to the guidance office. There, amidst the chaos, my mother arrived, pale and apologetic, bowing repeatedly to the teachers. Despite my attempts to explain, the guidance teacher, with his shiny face and bulging eyes, took Roy's side, swallowing his fabricated story without question. Roy, untouched due to his father's status, painted me as the aggressor. The teacher's parting words to me were laden with disdain, questioning what kind of adult I would become, always resorting to violence. As my mother and I left the office, the harsh realities of our financial struggles weighed heavily on me. Despite the incident, my mom believed in my good nature. I knew I couldn't burden her further, so I resolved more than ever to alleviate her hardships and prove everyone wrong about who I was destined to become. Years had rolled by since I made the decision not to pursue college, opting instead to work. Decades have faded into each other, days whisked away by seasons that changed before my eyes as society itself transformed at an overwhelming pace. The streets where I grew up no longer looked the same, and the sharp edges of my turbulent adolescence slowly blurred into softer, distant memories. It was during this period of reflection that an invitation to a middle school reunion arrived, stirring old ghosts. Among the faces that flashed in my mind was Roy's, with that familiar, mocking sneer. Despite my reluctance, knowing he would likely be there, I convinced myself to go. We were all adults now. Surely the pettiness of schoolyard conflicts wouldn't follow us into our grown-up lives. At the reunion, a classmate greeted me warmly. "Hey, Steven, long time no see. You look good." It felt strangely like slipping back through time to those middle school days. While many friendships had faded, a few had endured even through the aftermath of my public altercation with Roy. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he joked, patting his belly. Then, amidst the laughter and nostalgia, a voice I couldn't forget cut through. "Hey, you're here too, huh? Wow, Roy, that's you?" He appeared inebriated, his mood buoyant. Surprisingly, I found myself asking, "Roy, you okay?" His response was swift and sharp. "A bottom feeder like you worrying about me? I haven't fallen that low." Holding a wine glass aloft, Roy boasted, "I run Jack merchandising now. It's wise to stay on my good side." His arrogance undimmed, he then peered at me, taunting, "Hey, the high school dropout still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today." Without a second thought, he tipped the glass, drenching me with wine, the crowd falling silent as they witnessed the spectacle. The rich aroma enveloped me, a stark reminder of the disdain he still held. "How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high-life high school dropout," he sneered, unchanged from the boy who thrived on his privilege to belittle others. Anger and disappointment surged within me. Any faint hope that he might have changed was dashed. Facing Roy's mocking expression, I found my resolve. "Roy, I've made up my mind," I declared, my voice steady. "Fired? What's that supposed to mean, high school dropout? Can't even speak English?" he retorted, clearly confused. But I was serious and my words were clear. "It means exactly what it sounds like." The murmurs around us grew louder as the tension peaked. A former classmate tapped my shoulder, his expression echoing a question that seemed to linger in the charged air. After the humiliating incident at the reunion, I took a deep breath and decided to explain my current situation. Wiping the wine off my face with a handkerchief I had pulled from my pocket, I calmly began to speak. "Actually, I work at a food company that rivals Jack Merchandising. I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions and, coincidentally, I'm currently working on acquiring your company." Roy, trying to mask his sudden unease with bravado, his lips twitching slightly, replied, "What are you talking about?" The sweat on his forehead became noticeable as he tried to maintain his composure. "You should have been informed by now. President William from William Merchandising, my boss, was supposed to have officially contacted you about this acquisition," I continued. "William? Wait, the company you work for is..." Roy's face drained of color as the reality set in. "Yes," I affirmed. "I work for William Merchandising. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director, overseeing the entire operation." Deciding not to pursue college and instead entering the workforce directly was a challenging path. Initially, few companies were willing to hire someone without a college degree. I wasn't in a position to be selective. I applied for any job I could find, eventually landing part-time work at a logistics warehouse. Despite my efforts, the stigma of my educational background was a thick barrier, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Feeling lost and unsure of my future, I returned home from work one evening to a surprise. My father, who I never expected to see again, was there. He looked much older. His hair was streaked with white, despite his weak smile. Seeing him initially brought a rush of anger. "You just waltz back in now? Do you have any idea how much we suffered?" I confronted him. With tears in his eyes, my father apologized. "I'm sorry, Stephen. I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you and your mother. No excuse can make up for the hardship I caused. I'm deeply sorry." My mother and I were silent, absorbing his words. After a moment, my mother spoke. "Regardless, I'm thankful you've come back. Things might not return to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family. However, there is one condition." "And what might that be?" my father asked tentatively. "Give Stephen a full-time job at your company," she demanded. I turned to look at her, surprised by her boldness. "Stephen has been working hard since he decided not to go to college. He should be enjoying his youth, not struggling endlessly." That unexpected moment led to a turning point in my life. Joining my father's company not only provided stability but also a platform to rise through the ranks based on my merits and hard work, proving that the path I chose, though unconventional, was filled with potential. Despite not completing high school, I had always managed to keep my head above water with various jobs, but finding stable, full-time work was a different battle altogether. When the prospect of working at my father's company came up, my mother, with a rare sternness in her expression, pushed for my employment there. My father agreed, but with a firm condition: I needed to earn my GED. His tone carried a weight of sincerity. It was clear he cared deeply about my prospects. So I transitioned from a factory temp to an employee at a well-established company. This was no easy feat. As the president's son, I found myself the subject of envy and scrutiny. Every small mistake was magnified, and I struggled to adapt to the nuances of corporate life and business etiquette. The learning curve was steep, and my colleagues were far from supportive, often just scoffing at my efforts without offering any help. I felt isolated, battling through each day as I faced sneers and watched my hard work dismissed or my workspace disrespected. Despite these challenges, I persevered, driven by a mix of determination and a desire not to let my mother down. She had put herself on the line to secure this opportunity for me, and I couldn't bear the thought of failing her. I volunteered for even the most menial tasks and met unreasonable demands with earnest effort. Gradually, as I continued to work relentlessly, people began to recognize my dedication. Slowly, I started to be seen as a valuable team member, and this shift began to reflect on the quality and results of my work. This change didn't just benefit me personally, it acted as a positive influence within the company, helping to boost morale and, subsequently, sales. Over the years, my efforts paid off, and I was eventually promoted to executive director, tasked with significant responsibilities, including the negotiations for the acquisition of Jack Merchandising, a company that had been struggling for years. At a reunion, my newfound status became a topic of surprise and conversation among my former classmates. "Stephen, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among us. It's going to be a bit awkward just casually inviting you out now," one joked, highlighting the unexpectedness of my journey. Roy, however, remained skeptical and outright dismissive. "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale," he retorted. disbelief clouding his judgment. "It seems your dad, the president, hasn't been very forthcoming about the company's situation with you," I replied, calm but firm. "It's not surprising you didn't know, but concerning my promotion to president, that's in the works too." My response left Roy speechless, his previous arrogance washed away by the tide of reality that I had indeed changed my destiny through sheer grit and perseverance. With a stern expression, I conveyed the decision my father had given me, to restructure the entire management of Jack Merchandising, starting from the top. Roy's face turned pale. "That's impossible," he stammered. "You don't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision." I sighed, a mix of frustration and resolve filling me. "I heard about the reunion and remembered you were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here." As I spoke, a sense of disappointment washed over me. Roy hadn't changed at all. He was still demeaning others, still filled with misguided confidence. "But you can't just fire me. Come on, help me out. We were classmates, right?" His tone had shifted from arrogance to desperation. He was pleading now, but I couldn't let past camaraderie sway my professional judgment. "Running a company isn't as simple as you might think," I said firmly, gripping Roy's shoulders and locking eyes with him. "I've faced countless challenges as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You, on the other hand, had more advantages, like a good high school and a college education. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life." My voice trembled with restrained emotion as I spoke, the weight of the years bearing down on me. Roy simply stared back in silence, wordless and seemingly unable to respond. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Jack Merchandising building with my father. "Today we'll officially proceed with the acquisition," I declared. The night before, I had confided in my father, and after some initial hesitation, he had agreed to my plan. "We've been waiting for you," said the president of Jack Merchandising, greeting us warmly as we entered the meeting room. His son, Roy, followed him, a grim reminder of our previous encounter. Jack began, "We had hoped Roy would succeed me as president." He then turned the conversation to the acquisition, prompting me to start the discussion. However, Roy's behavior was far from what one would expect of a future president or even a professional. "Hey, Roy, are you even listening? This is about the future of your company. Do you even realize what being a president entails?" I raised my voice and frustration was evident. "I don't need to hear that from you," Roy retorted sharply, then turned to his father with an audacious claim. "Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence?" His father, witnessing this exchange, showed a look of exasperation, and even the typically stern Jack's expression grew more severe. "Fool! What do you know about running a company?" he responded, his voice laden with disappointment at his son's naivete and entitlement. The room filled with tension as the reality of the situation settled in for everyone present. Roy's temples throbbed with frustration as he faced us, his expression revealing a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Jack, his father, continued sternly, undeterred by his rising anger. "Stephen's right. Your behavior today is unacceptable. Running a company isn't a game. If you can't take this seriously, you should leave." Roy's response was feeble, overshadowed by his father's formidable presence. Standing up, the president turned to us with a grave look. "I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too lenient with my son, hoping he would mature in the workforce. I was wrong. I never imagined he would act so recklessly, especially in such an important meeting." He then addressed me directly. "To you, Stephen, the executive director of William Merchandising, and to your team, I am truly sorry for the trouble caused." My father, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "Your intentions are clear, Jack. The once commanding figure of the food company's president seemed considerably diminished. Jack, looking desperate, continued, "President Stephen, we need your help to save Jack Merchandising. We no longer can manage on our own. If we merge with your company, I will resign from all my management positions and the same will go for the entire board. But please keep our employees, our dedicated staff, without letting anyone go." With that, he bowed so deeply that his forehead nearly touched the table. I glanced at my father, who appeared deep in thought, his eyes closed. "Dad," I murmured. He nodded solemnly. "Jack," I began, "I see the dedication you have for your company. Given that, let's offer you another chance to turn things around. A chance for you and Roy to demonstrate you truly care about your employees. We will support you as much as we can. However, if that fails, we will have no choice but to assume full control." Roy and his father looked at each other shocked. "Stephen, how can we ever thank you?" Roy asked, his voice weak, his father beside him tearful, looking utterly drained. As I continued, I glanced between the two. "I've always harbored resentment towards my father," I admitted, causing a stir of surprise in Roy. "He was so consumed by work that I had to drop out of high school. I was determined to prove him wrong, yet my mother, who endured the most, chose to forgive him. At first, I couldn't understand her decision, but now I see why she chose forgiveness. She taught me the importance of it." My father, touched by my words, murmured, "Stephen, I am who I am today because your mother forgave me." The room fell silent, the weight of forgiveness and the chance for redemption hanging in the air, marking a pivotal moment for everyone involved. Recently, I've reached a point where I can finally begin to forgive my father. Jack nodded, seemingly motivated by an invisible force as I shared my belief in second chances and the strength gained from overcoming adversity. I turned to Roy, who was slouched back in his chair with a sulky demeanor, and caught his glance. "Roy, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up?" "But I don't know anything about running a company," he replied, uncertainty in his voice. Placing my hand on his shoulder, I reassured him, "It's okay to start now. Work hard and the results will come." Roy looked at me, a faint smile breaking through for the first time. Following our discussions, Jack Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with William Merchandising and began its journey toward recovery. Roy took on the role of president with his father as an advisor. He let go of the pride that came from being the son of Jack Merchandising's owner and worked tirelessly to rebuild trust with each business partner through humble interactions. His transformation became a source of inspiration for the employees, leading to a positive shift in the company culture. The once complacent company, previously marred by internal power struggles, saw its employees rise to the challenge. Sales teams put in more effort, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Roy made significant changes to the workplace, revising welfare policies to be more inclusive and eliminating divisive systems. This contributed greatly to a turnaround for the previously struggling company. Encouraged by the changes, including Roy's, the company's sales gradually improved, resembling ascending stairs. This year, we even managed to provide modest bonuses to all employees. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, allowing us to sponsor various advertising campaigns. "Stephen, President, hurry up, just a minute, wait for me." The reunion had become a catalyst for rekindling friendships. Initially wary of Roy, my classmates were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. "Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work?" I asked with playful annoyance. "It's just a habit," Roy replied, scratching his head in embarrassment, his demeanor endearingly sincere. "Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working. I forgot what it was you used to call me that all the time. Can't believe you remember that," Roy said, feigning exasperation. "All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink," I proposed. cementing our newfound camaraderie with a light-hearted bet that brought a genuine smile to both our faces. Reflecting on the conversation, I found myself agreeing inwardly. "That's a really good idea," I acknowledged. "Okay, Stephen, that's a first," Roy responded, pausing for a moment before using the nostalgic nickname. "Thanks, Stephen. Throughout my life, I've often held on to negative emotions, a trait common in human nature. I harbored resentment for being looked down upon as a high school dropout and felt a deep bitterness regarding my social standing. If I hadn't moved towards forgiving my father, I might never have reached out to Roy or reconnected with other old friends. Despite the past harassment and challenges from Roy, I couldn't bring myself to give up on him, remembering the struggles I had overcome myself. I've learned that people who navigate through hardships develop a resilience that prepares them for future challenges. If there's a genuine desire to start anew, change can indeed begin from that moment. Moving forward, I plan to lead the company with humility, navigating the intricate challenges of business with renewed dedication. I look forward to doing this alongside my valued friends and colleagues, understanding that our shared experiences and forgiveness have paved the way for this new chapter.